Hello, and welcome to Sense of Responsibility. I'm Alec Lindenauer, a certified financial planning professional, husband, and chief allowance officer to 2 daughters. I'm also the creator of the Sense of Responsibility tools and how-to instruction parents need to raise their children into financially literate, money-savvy adults, even if they don't know much about finance themselves.
I'm Julie Franz, a chef entrepreneur at heart, wife, and mother of 2 middle school children. I also curate the Sense of Responsibility community so parents have a forum to ask questions, share success stories, and discuss their journeys. As a financial newbie myself, I'm also cultivating our group support system to help carve out my own family's path toward financial literacy.
Hey, COR parents and caregivers. I'm looking forward to you all meeting a very good friend of mine today. Robbie Singer, he's not just a longtime friend, he's also like many of you. Successful with his career, a great home life, all-around good person, but perhaps in the sense of responsibility sense of things, he's very similar in that he's just starting out this new journey to raise financially responsible children. Today you're going to hear me introduce Robbie to Julie and to all of you as we talk about money and the role it played in his own development, what made him decide to take the allowance plunge, some of the wins and some of the challenges he's faced so far, and much more. So going in, at the time we recorded this episode, here's where Robbie was in the process. After he signed up for our first course, Starting Your Elementary Age Child on the Money Savvy Path, Robbie consumed all 27 instructional videos very rapidly. For you sci-fi fans, he basically reminded me of Neo in the original Matrix movies. He was very excited to start his 2 young daughters on the allowance program I teach in that course, and then carry those lessons through the rest of the month to teach about spending, income, and credit. We recorded this episode just after he had his second new robust allowance day and a ton of experiences as a result. So he's brand new at this. I'm excited for you to hear his progress, but also about his challenges, so you know that this stuff, while it's not rocket science, there are some bumps in the road that can be overcome pretty easily with just a bit of guidance and patience. I hope you enjoy meeting Robbie as much as Julie did. Teach sensibly, everyone. Welcome, everybody, to our next podcast edition. Very excited for this one. Today we have a very special guest, and I say special because he's a very good friend for many, many years, Robbie Singer. Robbie, welcome.
Thank you. I love the word special before my name, so appreciate that.
And Julie, and again, special, and this is always fun to do with you.
Thanks for having me back, Alec. Great to see you guys.
Robbie, I've known you, actually, we met in college, and we've been good friends ever since, and I'm excited for you to meet Julie. This is the very first time, so why don't we start there? Why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Great. Anyway, great to be here. It's been a cool experience, so pretty happy to talk about it. But I grew up in Miami, Florida. Kind of a average kind of bringing up. Great family. Currently own an artificial flower company. Do a lot of e-commerce related distribution throughout the United States. And I have 2 little girls, an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and a wife who have all kind of jumped into this program. So it's been a pretty cool experience so far.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about when you were growing up, when you were a kid. So tell us about, what was your first memory of money?
That's a great question. My parents were divorced when I was 5 years old, and there was definitely some thoughts around, hey, mom is leaving a family business, and how are we going to figure out where we're going to live? And I remember there was some little thoughts around that. I also remember other family members coming to help and sort of getting us into a place. Didn't grow up wealthy to any degree. And I remember, there was wanting things, and there wasn't stuff all around all the time. I mean, we had to be thoughtful around what we were going to purchase and what we did, and a mindset in my head. I'd love to have that different when I get older. So I do have some thoughts around that. When I was little, I definitely can remember that kind of thinking. But yeah, I mean, never was hungry, never was cold, you never needed, food or clothing type of thing. But, we didn't buy every new gadget that came out. And, I remember, wanting things, which I also kind of think, hey, that was probably a good way to grow
Yeah.
up, right? Not getting everything you want is, I think, part of life. And so, I had a good upbringing, but I also have memories of, being there was cautiousness around what we spent and where we spent it.
And were you involved in that conversation? Or did your parents like include you in those conversations about money, or did you just kind of feel it and see it?
Was not included, felt it, and saw it. Yeah. I mean, not that they were closed down if we asked questions, but there wasn't an active, conscious conversation, around where we were, what we were trying to achieve, and how I should think about things.
And how would that compare to kind of the life that you guys have now and maybe, the difference of the way your daughters are being raised in your household?
So, I try to have some element of my upbringing with them because I think there's some thoughts of, hey, providing too much. I'm in a different position than I was, growing up. And we try to have fun and we like to do fun things. So, we travel more and we do a lot of that kind of stuff. A challenge is getting my kids to recognize that that's special, right? And that not everybody gets to
Yeah.
do that. And I think that's part of why I wanted to participate in this program because we do a lot more and they do get a lot more than I got when I was little. And, there's often not thought behind that. Although we try to have a balance, it's unbalanced compared to my upbringing. And we don't, I'll tell you a story. My oldest daughter, who's tons of fun, went on a like a birthday extravaganza. One of her friends had a birthday, and they went down to the Everglades, and it was an airboat ride. It was kind of one of the first times she went away in a group like that. And, my wife Carla said, "Hey, maybe we should have a little bit of money in her pocket in case something." So I think she gave her $20 or $30. I don't remember exactly what it was. And so when she came back, Carla was with the parents, and she's like, "Your daughter is a blast. We had such a good time." She goes, "We got off the airboat ride. The first thing she wanted to do was tip the driver $10." Right. So she won. That's 50% of what we gave her for the entire day. Right. Then she wanted to take the other $10 and buy everybody in the group a snack. She's a super giving, fun person. And so she was nothing for herself.
Clearly.
Right. Nothing for herself, which I felt really proud about. Right. On the other hand, when she offered the other $10 to buy stuff for everybody, she clearly didn't have enough money to buy snacks for everybody that was in that boat. Right. So that was also part of the trigger for this. Like they just don't understand, the value of a dollar and how to kind of be thoughtful of that at this point in time.
So I definitely want to get into where you are in the program in a few minutes. But to be clear, so this was before you actually started giving them allowance and talking to them.
Absolutely.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So did you get allowance as a kid?
Very vague memory that maybe was like something we tried but never really happened. I don't think think there was a active regular program there.
So what's the first time then you can really remember going out in the world and saying, okay, I need to learn about money. I need to manage myself financially or deal with finances for the first time?
Yeah. So I grew up in an interesting extended family, immigrated from Europe. Grandparents came over with pennies in their pocket, to a destination where they didn't speak the language. It was this awe-inspiring story when I was little. And her brothers actually came here first. It was the first brother that came here by himself, 16 years old, had to figure out how to make his way. And he used to sleep on a bus sleep at work instead of taking a bus ride home to save a nickel so that he can bring the next brother over. And that always really stuck with me in some kind of way. And they ended up really living the American dream. Those brothers developed a very successful business. My grandma wasn't a part of that, but they were always over for dinners and what have you. And so I had a very entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, those were my role models. For some reason, I kind of stuck to that. And I knew I had this feeling of, hey, that's where I wanted to go. So from a very young age in life, that's probably if I go back to the other question, that's probably my earliest memory of money, but just not necessarily money itself, but just being inspired with what they were able to create and wanting to do something like that on my own.
So Julie, actually, I remember Robbie on every Sunday. This is shortly after college. Every Sunday he was selling silk orchids here in Miami, Lincoln Road, farmers market type environment. And now this thriving business all these years later. So Robbie, your grandparents would be proud.
Yes, thank you.
That's awesome.
All right, so let's get into sense of responsibility. Was that the impetus for starting that Everglades experience? Or you and I had talked about this. I told you a very long time ago, it was
Yeah.
at least a year or two ago, saying, hey, this is something I want to do. And you were like, oh yeah, that's really interesting. But what was the impetus for you to say, okay, I want to do allowance. I want to do something. I want to make this part of our routine.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, parenting is hard, right? It doesn't come with a rule book. And, you know, having my thoughts of how I grew up and where I am in life and how I wanted my children to think about things, how you interlace that into their lives is not I didn't know how to do it. I really didn't, and, we had a couple conversations. I was like, okay, let me know when it comes out. And then I had these couple of experiences where I was really happy that she was so gracious with what she had, but concerned about, how she actually was dealing with that. And then, I watched, the first episode and I was like, wow, it is an instruction manual to some degree, and it's a very practical program to put in place. So the more I thought about it, the more I had experiences with my kids, the more I understood what the program had to offer, the more I wanted to jump in and kind of start participating.
So where are you now in the process? So you've had a couple of Money Sundays, you 1, 2, 3. There were some challenges there,
Yeah.
but tell everybody where you are now.
So we've had two, and we're kind of sort of just, I believe, just after the second, probably, or about to have the third, I guess, if you will. And yeah, I mean, it's been cool. The kids are really excited about it, so it's not a fun thing, right? It's something that they kind of enjoy,
Yeah.
enjoy doing. I don't know. I could go into the details around some of the conversations, but
Sure.
two and a half Monday Sundays into it.
Okay.
And so, what are your house rules, Robbie? How much do you give them? First of all, how much do you give them? And how did you decide on that
Yeah.
number? And then next, what are some of the rules around it?
I wasn't going to recreate the wheel. I did very much, apropos to what was suggested in the video. So we're doing twice their age, once a month, and trying to see if is that too much or too little.
Okay, so your youngest is getting
Yeah.
16 a
Yes.
week, and your oldest is
That's
getting
right.
20 a
Yeah.
week. So
A month.
80 a
A month.
month.
No,
And
a month. So they're getting 20 a month and
oh,
16 a
okay,
month.
gotcha. Do you have all 4 buckets going, or did you just select
All four, all four
some?
buckets. Yeah.
All 4. And do they have to put a little bit
They
into
have to
each bucket?
they have to
How
put
do
a little bit in
they?
each bucket, right? We went by the rule book, as you guys. I know there was some flexibility there, but we didn't think it made sense to get creative.
I'm with you. We did the same thing. We do their age every week. So they're getting, my kids are 11 and 13, so they get 11 a week and 13 a week, but we do it
Okay.
by the month because there's no way I can keep up with doing
Yeah, I know.
anything weekly.
We're doing it by the month.
It's
The
way
only
too much.
creativity is like we did not do the little pig. We went straight to the jars because there was no way I was going to
Right.
wait while my kids try to take the money out of
No.
the little pig every week. Yeah, every month.
No, I tried the
Yeah,
pig years ago and
yeah.
I failed miserably with that whole process within probably a couple weeks.
It was after one kind of like paper cut reaching in there. I said, "It's not going to work." Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I've
Yeah.
got the scars to
There you
prove
go.
it. Go
Yeah.
for the jars unless you're really dealing with little ones and coins, no
That's
doubt.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we have treasure chests, Robbie. We have
Oh,
wooden
that's
treasure
cool.
chests. It's nice. They fit in the spaces where we need
Yeah.
them to fit, and it works out well for us. So, do you do the 10% then? They have to put 10% in each bucket as a minimum, or do you have
No
a rule
rule.
around
Like
that?
they can put whatever they want in
Okay.
any
Penny, just a
penny.
penny at
Yeah,
minimum.
yeah.
And so how is that going? How are they distributing so far?
It's chaotic, right? So there's no rhyme or reason.
So set the table for us, though. So are you doing it with the two of them together?
Yes.
Is it all 4 of you, your wife, you?
All,
It's so all 4 of you at the table
all
together.
four of us today,
Okay,
at the table. So one, like, hey, it's
good.
a nice family moment, that you get to have. It's pretty,
Yeah,
from that regard, it's cool. But yeah, we have all four of us. We do one at a time. We make them count what's in the investment jar, right? Try to get them to calculate what 10% is. Put that aside, and then they put the investment money back in there.
truly
We are
following the
following
formula.
the
Love it.
formula. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Okay, now Robbie, here's a question. Are you handing them the 10% to go back into their allowance, or is that 10% going back into the investment jar?
So first of all, we have a little money box, right? So we make them count
Mm-hmm.
their 10%. Once we say, hey, yes, you've calculated it correctly, and we have to help them, but they count their own money out of our mommy and daddy bank. That
Perfect.
10% that they earn does not have to go back into the investment. It goes into the pool with their allowance that they get to decide to distribute.
Right.
I
Yep.
believe that was the
Fantastic.
rule.
Great.
We try to implement it properly.
Yep.
I
That
did it wrong for
Okay.
many months, so
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
I want to make sure you're
Yes.
doing
Yeah.
it
All right.
right. Yeah, I will share all of my failures to help you
Okay.
succeed faster.
Okay, so now they have the two pools of
Yeah.
money in front of them, and it's time for them to allocate. How their first couple of core days, how have they
Yeah.
allocated?
So we haven't done everything perfectly. Like we haven't picked what the charitable donation is yet. We've been trying to think about how to think about that. I thought that they would put everything in the spend jar. They're not necessarily doing that, but they are. There's an eye on that. So it was
Yeah,
probably a
yeah.
little bit more heavy kind of there. I don't remember exactly, but they were sort of distributing evenly, maybe a little bit more in the spend jar.
It's definitely interesting to watch the trends on that one and see kind of how that changes over the
Yeah.
course of the month or the
Absolutely.
months. My kids are very, very, very different
Yeah.
from one another. And by now, 8 or 9 months into it, I'm definitely seeing a very consistent pattern. But it took them
Yeah.
a little bit to get into their systems.
So on the second time we did it, when we counted out the money and they weren't putting anything into the investment jar, they didn't want to put more in there. And I was like, hey, you got that extra dollar. That didn't, I don't know if that's registering to them as like enough to be an incentive to put more in there.
Right.
It
But
will.
it will become like my daughter just realized the other day because she has $230 or something in her
Okay. Right.
investment jar now. And so
Yeah. It's
she
a
got
lot. Right.
$23 on top of her allowance. And that
Yeah.
that really did make an impact on her. And now my son is so much that he's putting more than I think he should in investment and save.
Because it's costing you too much money now with that 10% payment.
Yeah, it is. And I'm like, no, don't put it in the
Yeah.
investment. Spend
Yeah.
it.
All right. So a couple
And
Yeah.
things
I'm
here.
reminding
I
him.
do want to give you both, either a reminder or a preview that at some point you have to cut back that interest rate, right? The point of giving
Ah,
them so
right.
much is to get them excited, to get them to do it, to potentially, we'll call it overfund that bucket, right? We want to teach them, we want them to accept the power of
Yeah.
compounding. With my kids, once they got to 500 in the investment bucket, I was like, okay, now we're cutting that back to
Mhm.
5%. And then did that for a while, and then ultimately the goal as they got into middle school was, okay, now we're transitioning you to real world. This is real world. Interest rates are paying you, now 4% a year, 3% a year. Like, well, I don't like that. Well, yeah, that's why we have all these other investments, and so that's the natural progression that we're all going for. So don't feel like, wait a minute, I'm giving them way too much
Yeah.
money here with that interest rate. And I also like to remind everybody that if you start to feel like that, wait, am I giving them too much money? You have to remember that some of that money goes to charity, some of that goes to invest. It doesn't mean that they're all piling it into spend.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
that's okay.
Yeah.
So actually, a question for the two of you, I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, right? How surprised were you initially, and as time has gone on, that your kids did not stuff as much in the spend as they possibly could? Because I think that's probably the general expectation. So, Robbie, we'll go to you
Yeah. I was
first.
really surprised that it was just not all spend, but I think they were trying to have a practical mind about it. They were like, "Oh, this is interesting." I think they liked the thought of giving, right? Going back to my daughter's, example of what she did on the boat. So I think there was some allure to that. They don't get the interest part yet, right? So, but they still put some in there. We try to explain it to them.
Meaning they don't understand the power of
They don't.
compounding
They
yet.
don't. Yeah, yeah. We did for going back to the allowance rules. Our kids, they're not. It's not tied to a responsibility where they have to do something, right? We did it. Hey, we want to
Right.
teach you about money, and there's 4 money principles here. So there's something that kind of stuck, and maybe that's why there was a little bit more of an even spread. I think, I don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was surprising. There wasn't all spent.
Yeah. Julie, how about you?
Well, You know my daughter.
I do.
And she is all spend all the time. Robbie, she is a
Ah,
fashionista. All
uh-huh.
she wants to do is
Yes.
shop all the time. And she likes expensive things. She likes Lululemon. She
Mm,
likes Urban Outfitters. You know,
yeah.
she likes the expensive stuff. So she is very predictable. It is 10% in each of the buckets and everything else to spend. And then she's constantly through the week asking for more jobs. How can she make more money to go into her spend bucket? So with her, it is what it is. I'm not surprised. It's exactly what I would have predicted. What with John, it is a little bit more surprising because he does need quite a bit of money through the month and he wants to spend it on things throughout the month, but yet when he's has all that money in front of him, he really does distribute to save and to invest quite a bit. Like I said, like more than I even think he should, and I have to remind him like, hey, remember, you're going to need to go to Sky Zone. You're going to want a meatball sub on Wednesdays. You go to the pool with your friends. And so then he kind of pulls a little back. So that is a little bit surprising to me. But just looking at the way that they are, like the kids that they are,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
I remember the moment that my youngest learned, absorbed, understood compounding. And I do talk about this in that course, in the first course. And that moment was because we always did the allowance with them together. That core day was with them together. And my oldest was very judicious. It was a quarter, a quarter, a quarter, a quarter. It was always 25% across the board, splitting the money. I don't know why. That was just her nature. And my little one was and she started very young. She was in kindergarten at the time. And it took about 18 months or so, something like that. But one day she realized how much more Grace was getting. And she was like, I want that much
Mm.
money. I was like, well, this is why. Remember? And she was like, whoa. And so since that day, she has been putting in much more into invest. And she's quite the investor.
The light bulb, those are like the coolest moments watching your kids when you see that light bulb go off.
I think we just had that moment with John this past core day because I had given them each $25 to put into stocks. And so, and then they put a little bit more in. So they each have 50, 25 in Amazon and 25 in Apple. And it was over the course of a month that 50 became 55 or something like that. Like it compounded by 10% very quickly. So I pulled it up for Cassidy and I said, this is what happens when you really invest it. Remember a month ago we put this money in, and she goes, well, that's only $5. That's not a lot. And I go, in a month? Yes, it is. It's 10%. Later that day, I showed the same exact thing to John and I said, look, it went up by $5 in 1 month. And he goes, well, let's take some of my invest cash and put it in there. I want it to grow that fast. And I said,
Winning.
well, if we take
Mm.
if we take your money if we take your cash and put it in here, I'm not paying you interest anymore on that money. You are getting real interest from the real, investment. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's take $300 and put it
Oh,
in.
that's cool.
So we did. And he went
Amazing.
pretty big on Amazon. He asked my brother for some advice. And that was the winning moment when I was like, okay, this is what we were waiting for.
Amazing.
So it was exciting.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right, Robbie, tell us about some, a light bulb moment or some win since. We know she tried to give
Yeah.
away her
Right. Right.
$20 to the airboat people. All right, now what about since? Tell us an interesting story.
There's definitely been a moment where, hey, we were going to go to Starbucks, and I was like, okay, what do you want to get there? And so, well, how much is that? I don't know. And I said, well, I think it's $5 or $6. So we can go, but we'll use your spend money. Mm. Never mind, Daddy. I'm good. We had a time or two of that, which is cool. But I think our bigger problem is that for the most part,
That's a huge
it's
win. Wait, hold on. I definitely want to hear about the challenge, but I see that as a
yeah.
huge win, right? I mean,
I think that's a
It, it
huge
it
win,
is. It's
Robbie.
just
Good
not
job.
like, I don't think we're where there's two challenges. I'll tell you. We'll get into it. So one is us and one is them. One,
yeah.
one,
Okay,
one,
let's go to the
one is them.
challenges.
Like the challenge with them is that they're always asking for candy. The majority of what they want is candy. And so I don't want to say, yes, go ahead, and spend $20 on candy because they will eat it that day. Right. And so we're saying no to things where that's where they're going to feel the pressure because they'll spend all the money. And maybe we just let them do it once and kind of run through all the money and then they can't do it anymore and then they have to suffer. But we haven't gotten ourselves to that cliff. So that's probably our biggest
Okay.
challenge is like, hey, we're still little kids in candy mode for some reason and not wanting or asking for as many other things.
What are your house rules right now about candy? Forget
Yeah.
allowance, spending, anything like that. Let's say you were in Walgreens
Yeah.
and one of them said, "I want some gummy bears." How would that
Well, it
conversation
depends
go?
if it's me or my wife, right? I'm more of the candy police, and my wife also likes candy. So, but it's I mean, hey, they're kids. We like to, and we want to enjoy life. So I don't think we have a hard and fast rule, but we're not going to wake up before breakfast and had anything in our stomach and go to 7-Eleven get an icy, right? So I think we're just more a common sense kind of practicality. You just had a little piece of cake where, no, we're not going to go buy a bunch of Skittles and eat that also. And, they'll eat a piece of cake and say, hey, I want to go get some
Yeah.
Skittles. No, you can't go buy Skittles. And so that's been probably our biggest challenge in regards to, hey, in order for them to feel the pressure, we almost need to say yes until they throw up, right, and run out of money. It's a kind of the kind
Well,
of the,
I'm going to give you a
okay.
different. I'm going to give you an alternative to the vomit.
Appreciate that.
So, okay, good. We went not too long ago. We went on vacation to Maine, and now my kids are going into ninth grade and going into seventh
Yeah.
grade. Yet we were still there, and when they were like, "Ooh, these lollipops are very special. We don't get to buy these." And I'm like you. Actually, we're both, thankfully, my wife and I are the joint candy police. We want them to enjoy, same as you. So as it is now, whether they bought those lollipops or they're here and we're at Walgreens, whatever it is, all of the candy, it goes into the candy jar in the pantry. And at the appropriate time, whenever that is, then it's like, oh, okay, now it's the time to eat candy. So I still let them buy whatever it is they want to buy. My house rules, you heard me talk about it in the course, there's no glitter, and it's like, I don't want too much slime in the house. So there's a very, very few things. But if they want something like candy, which is not really against the rules, I will let them buy it, but I won't necessarily let them eat it. It's almost like
Mm.
Halloween, right? When they come back from Halloween, they have this huge thing and they don't just eat the whole thing in 3 days. It goes into the pantry. And then if we're like, if it's dessert time and we're all eating dessert, then it's okay. Yeah, sure. You can have candy.
Our Halloween candy magically disappears by the Wicked Witch in the morning, but it's
Wow.
Mine too.
yeah, yeah.
Really?
I pay my kids for their
Uh,
candy and then I donate it, but they
oh,
they
that's a
always
great
choose the
idea.
cash
Yeah.
over the candy. Well, Cassidy's half and
All right, we're
half,
gonna have to
but
talk about
yeah,
that this
we
Halloween, Julie. I don't know about the paying
mhm,
for buying
it
the
works.
candy.
The candy jar is a great idea. That's really practical. Alec, I need you in my pocket for these decisions when stuff comes up. Okay. Put you on my shoulder or something. But yeah,
Well, this is what Julie does. Julie, her, she's like the parent going through all of
yeah,
this. So it's like she's got the, within the course, you have also the message boards and put that stuff on there. I mean, look, you can always call me, but put it up there and either Julie's going to tell you what's going on in
yeah.
her house or I'm going to tell you what's going on in my house. But absolutely, I would love anybody who's listening to this and doing the course, by all means, put your challenges up there on the message boards in the community and we'll tackle them. But yeah, that would be my
No, that's great
recommendation.
because I think, like I say, hey, I'm glad we had a couple of those eureka moments, but I feel we would have gotten further if they felt the strain a little bit more. The second thing is us. We're used to getting them things, right, and being their parent, going somewhere, doing stuff. They want to go to the movies, like all these things that we want to do too because we love spending time with them. And choosing when we should say you buy versus we buy has been probably our bigger challenge. And I don't think we're putting enough on them to have them feel the strain, right? Because one, for a little kid, I don't think like $20 is a crazy amount of money for the month, and they're not spending it all, right? So I either reduce their allowance or we
Right.
got to change, what their responsibility is, and we haven't found that groove yet.
So I think that takes a bit of time, Robbie, and you are, pretty new, so I would just like
Yeah,
give yourself some patience and grace and know that that will come. I think, for us, it's say Starbucks, for example. Cassidy would love to have Starbucks every day. I don't. If we're on a road trip and we're like, we're getting Starbucks as a family, what does everyone want? Okay, we buy that. But if she's like, hey, I want Starbucks today, can you take me or can I walk there? It's like, okay, that's when you're going to spend your own money because that's not something
yeah,
that like we need. I don't want it. I didn't offer it. Same thing with John. Yeah, like if we're all grabbing lunch and he wants a meatball sub,
yeah.
of course I'm going to buy him the meatball
Yep.
sub. But if it's a Wednesday after school and I'm like, hey, I'll make you a grilled cheese or a quesadilla or a bagel. What do you want for a snack? And he says, I really want a meatball sub. It's like, you got to spend your own money. We're home. We have tons of food here. If that's
Hmm.
your deal, that's your deal. So that's kind of how I manage that. But I'll also just tell you about something that happened yesterday. Cassidy loves shopping and spending. And in the past, it was always like, well, can you buy me this? Can you buy me that? Right now she knows very clearly there's like certain things for school I will buy her. She needed a new pair of Birkenstock-ish shoes. I won't pay for Birkenstocks for her, but I'll buy her like some knockoffs. I had already told her. So yesterday we go shopping and she's looking at some things and looking at some things. She goes, shops around, and she found two things she wanted. They weren't part of what we had already discussed that I would buy. And she just marches right up to the counter. She hands them the stuff. She hands them the debit card and she buys it. She
That's
walks out with her
awesome.
bag.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Right.
wow, she didn't ask me for anything in the store because she
That's
knew.
amazing.
And then we go to another store. She sees some Birkenstocks. She says, Mom, they have the shoes. They're only $30. And she didn't have to ask me, will you buy them? Will you not? We'd already talked about it. I grab them. I pay for them. And that's kind of how we went through the rest of the day. The only things I bought were those Birkenstocks and maybe, actually, that was it. I think that was literally the only thing that I bought for her. And she bought herself 4 or 5 different little things.
Hmm.
And there was just an
Yeah.
understanding.
That's
Like,
amazing.
this is what you
Yeah.
buy.
Yeah.
This is what I
Really
buy.
cool.
It was awesome.
A lot of times it really comes down to the want
Yeah.
versus need. Like you really want to try and have them pay for. I'm not going to say everything that they want they should pay for, but 90% should be, if they want it, they pay for it. If they need it, then that's you paying for it
Yeah.
100% of the time is basically the delineation. The exceptions to that would be certainly if you're all doing something together, like you don't all need to go bowling, but you Robbie, or you Carla, the two of you want to take everybody bowling. That's a desire for you. Then absolutely do that. But when you're at the bowling alley and they want to play the claw or they want to go to the arcade or whatever, if that's not something that you would normally do, then I would say, oh, you use your money. Or if you might ordinarily say, okay, look, here's $1 and go enjoy, and the rest is on you, then hey, then that's you paying for 10% of what they want. So you want to try and train them to pay for what
Yeah.
they want. So real life, how that we've used that in our house is last year Grace wanted the most stylish sneakers, right? And so, if you're a sneakerhead, you can go anywhere from $100 to
Yeah.
$1,000 for a pair of sneakers. What all the kids were wearing, and I wanted her to feel, included. I didn't want her to wear the off-brand and be made fun of or, anything like that. But they were expensive. It was $100 for a pair of, it was the all-white Nike. I think they were the Nike Flights. And I was like, so this is what everybody's wearing. She's like, yeah, totally. And I was like, okay, this is our baseline. But she found these super cool Air Jordans. It was like, special design, black with gold stripe. And those were like 140. And I said, okay, I'll give you a choice. I was like, I am all in for the $100 sneakers, because I want you to fit in. You have to pay the overage. If you want the super high profile extra design, you need sneakers, but you want the special Air Jordans.
Yeah.
That's on you. And she did it.
That's how
And
we
she
do it
loved it.
too.
And it made a massive difference. And she really appreciated the
That's
sneakers
awesome.
and loved them and, and all of that.
Took care of them probably because she paid the extra, the extra amount there. I consciously understand the principles. I think we've been challenged more than I expected, thinking about that on a moment to moment, day to day basis. So that's something that we got to work on.
Julie, how many months do you think it took until it became more second nature than not?
I mean, I think I relate it to compounding interest, right? Like it's a little bit the first month, a little more the second month, a little more the third month, where now the wins I'm seeing are
Mm.
compounded that much bigger. They're like a day like yesterday just blew me away. I mean, it was amazing. But, last month we weren't there. So I think every month that you keep going, you'll see bigger and bigger and bigger wins and milestones.
Consistency.
So yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing a little bit right now, and that's awesome. But I would say the more you stick to your consistent conversations and your energy around it, and like being really transparent, or even talking to your kids like, hey, I'm having a struggle with this right now. Can we like figure this out together? Right? You want the $100 and $140 shoes, and
Yeah.
I can pay 100. How should we come together? And like really including them, in the conversation, and your wife as well. And I think you'll start to see those moments of understanding and enlightenment
Okay,
become
cool.
bigger and bigger moments.
Agreed.
In my house, my husband and I, we also still deal with some challenges of misalignment of like what we see as the allowance going towards or being about. And he's from the Midwest, and he says, well, it should be about chores. They should be earning that allowance. And I'm saying, no, they should be doing chores because that's what you do in a family. And the money is to teach them how to spend money. And so we constantly kind of have to recalibrate and realign with our own, backgrounds and values, and
Yeah.
what our why is. So I think that conversation
Yeah.
with Carla ongoing is
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
important too, to make sure you two are
Definitely.
aligned.
Yep. It made me think of, I had a conversation with Ashley, my wife, before the holidays, I think last year. She started getting into the, I want to buy this and I want to buy that and I want to buy that. And I naturally, right, this is more my gig, and, and teaching them about money. It's like, well, what about this? Do they really need that? Do they want that? And she looked at me, she goes, no. It's like, listen, she said, 11 months out of the year, like, I'm not spoiling them. And I get it. And this is important. Like, we need to do this. This is for all the reasons that you believe that this is right. It's like, but come the holidays, I want to spoil them. That is my time to spoil them. And there's nothing you're going to do about that that's going to spoil them. I was like, you know what?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hell yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. That's
Right.
it.
Okay.
Totally. Done.
Consistency with flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and we have a very, very, we are
Yeah.
partners truly in life, or joint decisions and all that. But it was like, yeah, that made absolute total sense. I get it. So even though it's like, okay, you want them to handle all their wants, like, hey, there are times it was like, if I went on a road trip, but, by myself, I was in Gainesville, and I came back, I bought them t-shirts, cause daddy went out of town, and that was a nice memory for me when my parents would go out of town. So those things happen.
Right.
But when, now that your antenna is up, when you're out together, just try and keep that either 90% of the wants are on them,
Right. Yeah.
In a general setting.
Yeah. And Robbie, it's really cool too when they get used to your, cadence of allowance, and they really do understand the value of $1 and what $20 is. You might just hand them $20 randomly, like, oh, you're going out with your friend. Here's a $20 bill.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah. The appreciation
wow,
level.
thank
Right.
you,
Yeah.
Daddy.
Yeah. It's
And
cool.
before they just kind of expected it, or didn't really realize what $20 meant. And so when you do give it as a gift, it's just so much more impactful once you really get into the sense of responsibility kind of methodology month after month. It's really remarkable.
True. We have 2 more questions for you, Robbie. What has been the biggest surprise so far? You're only 2 months in. So what's the biggest surprise at this point?
I think, going back to what I just said, I think the biggest surprise is more us than them, right? Us having to struggle to really kind of think about what not to give them, right? So I didn't expect that. I thought the challenge would be more on them than it is on us. So that's probably the biggest surprise. Some of the other things too is like, I like walking to Starbucks with my daughter, right? It's it's time that we get together, and I was almost disappointed when she said, nah, no, thank you, Daddy, right? Because I was like, I want to go, with you. So a little bit of that, but I think the weight of responsibility on us to really figure out the program and kind of stick to that program and have consistency. I don't want to call it a chore, but you got to retrain. You really have to retrain yourself.
All right. And then the last question for you is, what advice or words of wisdom would you give to another parent who is like, they haven't quite started allowance, but, they kind of know they should. And what words would you share with them?
Going back to the beginning, parenting is hard, and like having a rule book, it's like, what an amazing gift to have a course to train you on how to do this. I just feel like we have a whole new like weapon system as parents to like raise good, healthy, thoughtful children. So just start, like us, we're fumbled through it. So what? Like, we're probably going to improve this, even if it takes us 8 months or a year, I think we'll eventually get there as a family. So fumble through it. The other thing in the beginning, I'm like, crazy sometimes. And so I kept on rewinding the tape and trying to write the notes of, what exactly, so I think I probably should have given myself, a little bit less pressure to do this perfect. But at the end of the day, I was like, hey, I'm not going to recreate the wheel. I'm just going to kind of do whatever was kind of the best practice. Certainly, you could kind of do whatever is right for your family. For us, it was just like, hey, let's just start with what you guys did, right? And then if we need to make a change, we'll go from there. And that made it a little bit easier to kind of implement, right? Because we didn't have to think about too much. I just really needed to understand the rules and how to do it. I took a little bit of notes of each thing just so I remember how to kind of flow through it. And so that gave it a little bit of an easier start. So I know we're not totally there, and I'm not getting I've seen some percolation of what's going to be a really cool experience. I'm giving myself the freedom to take the time and not put too much pressure on my family to be perfect about it. And so, hey, that's how it is for us. I think other people may jump in and be a lot more aggressive to the begin, from the beginning. But I didn't want to drive my family nuts, right? Because I tend to do that, right, with these kind of things. So at least, hey, we're going to chug along like a little choo-choo train or turtle, and we're going to get there, and that just get started, right, kind of a thing.
I think that those really are words of wisdom, and it's not the part where you said, "Hey, this course, da da da." It is just start. And it is be consistent and give yourself the flexibility. I agree with all of those, because whether it's, look, I believe obviously wholeheartedly in this program, and so the three of us do, but it is any program, it is start, it is get to it, it is get money in your kid's hand is really the most important thing. So I agree.
Yep. I'm still iterating my process every month. So I am totally with you. I think that was a great bit of advice for other parents. Thank you, Robbie.
Robbie, thank you for doing this. It's much appreciated.
It was great. I mean, we're having a lot of fun. And I actually, I'm doing this because I'm super appreciative of having the program in my hands and having a new set of tools. I feel like a better parent. So thank you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thanks for saying that.
Great to hear. Well, keep us in the loop, Robbie, of your progress and your wins. And, we're really excited to see how this unfolds for your family.
Will do.
Make sure to share that with us.
So to everybody out there, I would say, remember the resources. It's the course is always available, of course, but also hit that little subscribe button on whatever you're listening to us now on, whatever the medium is, whether it's YouTube or Apple Podcasts, whatever it is. And in closing, as always, I'll say, teach sensibly, everybody.